I want to thank you all for coming. I'm going to just give you an idea of what the agenda for the event is. And once I'm done with that, we'll have Jonathan Askin, who has been critical for helping us get this venue and also in the general Brooklyn technology and entrepreneur community, give a little bit of an intro and just an explanation of what he's up to these days. So, overall we'll do that. I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview of what the Meetup is. Some of you may be new. We certainly want to thank everyone who's helped out, from the venue to the volunteers up front who helped people sign in and allowed me to do other things. And of course to Melanie, who's been generous enough to donate her time tonight. And we're hoping not only is this talk enlightening, but you'll have an opportunity to have some questions for her that she can address at the end. After that, then I'll do a book giveaway, which will just be randomly from business cards that have been left off. And that'll be that. And then you're free to hang out for a little while longer and mingle. So, Jonathan, do you want to tell us what you're up to?
Just 1 minute of your time. I'm a professor here at Brooklyn Law School. This is the wrong audience to say this to, because I suspect 2 years ago, all of you had heard of blockchain. About 2 years ago, I decided I was going to take a leave, go to MIT, and teach blockchain. My students, my colleagues, with possibly one exception, didn't know what the hell I was talking about. 2 years later, you can't say blockchain without everyone in the room knowing what you're talking about and being excited and interested. That's the curve it's taken over the past 2 years. All I want to say to the folks in this room is my students and I give free legal support for bootstrapped ventures, usually pursuing either socially virtuous missions or activities that the law hasn't quite anticipated. As a result, this semester, we find our plate filled with blockchain ventures. So my ask for you all is, if any of you are pursuing interesting blockchain or other new technology ventures, and you're bootstrapped, you need creative legal support, I got an army of law students, most of whom are in the back of the room taking attendance here. We're excited by blockchain. We're excited by the novel issues. We're also very excited about the policy implications of blockchain. If you want free earned media, playing in the policy arena and using law students as your draftspeople, as your scribes, is a nice way to go. You get yourself on the map. You now are perceived as a leader in the blockchain movement. It's my only ask. I want to collaborate with you all. And with that, back to Mike. I love everything that Mike touches. The Brooklyn Futurist always has a home here whenever he needs it.
Yeah, we appreciate it. The Brooklyn Law School has been really essential to our growth. When this was an existing group, and I'll go into that a little bit more, but I had about 1,000, 1,200 members. It was well run, and then the founder running a tech company got bought out by Facebook and went on to bigger things. You can kind of understand it. And then it was dormant for a year, and then I took it over and have grown it to its current level. So I want to give the volunteers who have helped us, mostly sitting up front, just maybe you guys want to come up and tell us what you're up to, and if there's any kinds of announcements you want to make or queries you want to put out there. Yeah, so guys, come on up. Just so that everyone can hear you. Who's new here, by the way, in the Meetup? First timers. Wow, great. And are you guys involved with blockchain sort of outside of work, with work, your own businesses, or outside of work? Okay. All right. So, yeah. Put it out there.
Hi, everyone. I'm Chris Eringer, and I'm a 3L here, so I'll be graduating in May. I'm mainly here because my undergraduate's in computer science, so blockchain. A big love of mine is because it's a good mix between law and computer science, as it starts to sort of infiltrate the legal sphere and cause real-world change. So I'm excited to see how that turns out as we go into the future. And I'll be starting a job in May as a lawyer, but not doing blockchain work, unfortunately, but maybe in the future. And thanks for coming out, everybody.
Yeah, I'm Martin Pasante. I really don't have too much to say, but yeah, I got interested in blockchain a couple months ago, mostly through the enthusiasm of Professor Askin, but got really interested in fintech, and through the Blip Clinic here at school, I'm going to be trying to working with a couple of blockchain companies, one from Korea. But yeah, I just think it's a really interesting technology. I think it's the future.
Hi, I'm Lucy Smith. I used to do digital art before arthritis robbed me of that ability. I'm now in law school and I'm in the Blip Clinic, and the thing that interests me most about blockchain is how it can protect internationally intellectual property. As a former artist and a person who has many friends who are artists, both writers and digital works of art and film and stuff, I'm really interested in that, how blockchain can apply to that.
Hello, everyone. I'm Taubleb's son. I'm also graduating. I'm a 3L. I'm graduating after this semester, and I've been interested in blockchain, like everyone else, probably like the last couple of, not the last couple of months, but on and off throughout the past few years. And through the Blip Clinic, I'm working with some startups that's working with the blockchain technology, and yeah, I'm just excited about it, and the more I learn, the better. So thanks for coming out, and I'm looking forward to the presentation.
Great, and if you want to get in touch with any of these folks, you could either contact Jonathan or contact me, and I can share contact information or connect you guys. So if you'll indulge me, I'm just going to give you an overview of the group. I'm the organizer. I'm not going to recite every bullet point, but you get an idea of the scale. We've been in some other venues, but Brooklyn Law School has been predominant and really our most reliable. I do produce these events with help from volunteers like this, but I also book professional speakers for a living, so that helps me a little bit as well. There are a couple of other Futurist meetups around the world that are comparable. Two of them are larger, one in London, I believe, actually both of them in London. And I would encourage you, they do a lot of webinars and very active if you're ever there. Probably every couple of weeks, one of them is running something. We've been covered here and there through some local newspapers, even mainstream newspapers. Sponsors, of course, I want to give credit to Brooklyn Law School and their affiliated organizations. Jolie McPhee and his wife are regular videographers for us, and we appreciate that because that gets us onto the YouTube channel and expands our reach. My company, again, books speakers, and so Futurists are one aspect of that, but I also work in a lot of other endeavors. I've given you the self-promotional stuff. You can check out that website if you're interested in even just finding out about other Futurist speakers. These are some of the people that I've worked with: Martha Stewart, Marcus Lemonis, some famous chefs, some folks that have run very large companies, maybe not household names. In general, we're looking for topics that they're not just a trend for this year or a fad, but something that has legs and where the speaker can really stretch, and you might call it speculate, and look out 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago. That was the nature of the group when it started, and for the most part, the presenters here have had that sort of attitude of just looking out pretty far out. We're not limited. It doesn't have to be technology. It often has been, but it could be, I've done things on the ocean, chocolate, women in innovation, just anything that has some sort of long-term outlook. Who's in the audience? I mean, it does vary depending on the nature of the event, but it's usually folks that are in technology, media, a little more entrepreneurial. And I also run a network of other Futurist meetups that are like this in other cities. Maybe if you're going there, you might look them up, and sometimes we collaborate in terms of just sharing ideas on talent. Those are some of the cities. There are some others as well. And I've gotten to meet those folks as well. These are some of the authors that we've had here. All have done very well, and most of them are professional speakers, including Melanie. And I would encourage you to look into what they're doing. Those are some of the people that we've had. A few of them are members, again, like Melanie. David Rose is a member, I believe Gary Marcus as well. Coming up, I'll give a teaser. I'm trying to get the guy who wrote the screenplay for Blade Runner. And you know that the new one is coming out in about a month. And he happens to live around here, so there's a possibility. He's a very interesting guy. I could fill 20 pages with all the different resources that are out there on futurism. Technically, is an interesting group that sort of conglomerates various meetups together. They have a publishing arm. Global Net 21 and London Futurists are the two very large and active futurist meetups based in London. But they do have webcasts and live streams that you can catch as well, and I highly recommend it. The Internet Society has been a big supporter through Jolie McVie, and they also have a pretty fertile website and a lot of futurist topics on that. And I'm just giving credit to some of the you could say, the blockchain-oriented entities that have promoted this event, so we appreciate that. If you're just looking for weekly event listings in technology and entrepreneurship, Gary's Guide, Charlie O'Donnell's newsletter, and Digital New York are good places to see. I could always use help promoting this, getting new members, even getting ideas for speakers, just the tactical production of this, and just come to me later or contact me. I'm always happy to work with new people. And so I guess I am going to give you a little bit of a introduction to Melanie. One thing is we'll do some Q&A at the end, and I'm sure a lot of you, there's a lot of engagement in this topic. I would just ask, please ask the question, no long self-promotional, no tirades, just ask the question so that we can indulge as many of those questions as possible. That's sort of my pet peeve about these meetups. So, and this will be videotaped as well, just so you know. So Melanie Swan is a philosopher and economic theorist at the New School in New York City. She's an author of Blockchain Blueprint for a New Economy and has published many articles, papers, and book chapters on this topic. If you go to her site, melanieswan.com, you'll see some great links for that. She leads the Institute for Blockchain Studies, an independent nonprofit research institute examining the theoretical, philosophical, and societal implications of blockchain technology. And that's what I found appealing, is that this wasn't someone who's just going to, maybe they're not selling a certain platform, they're sort of agnostic. They have a very holistic and long-term view, and so it'll be a much more credible and objective overview. So our education includes an MBA in finance from the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania and a BA in French and economics from Georgetown University. And she's a faculty member at Singularity University, which is also another great resource if you're interested in futurism. Check out melanieswan.com or on Twitter, LABLOGGA. And please welcome Melanie.
Is it okay, the volume, if I'm just speaking like this? Yep, perfect. Well, thank you very much, Mike. I really appreciate that kind introduction. And I am very happy to be with you today, a group of forward-thinking futurists like yourselves. I enjoy supporting the futurist community and talking about one of my favorite topics, blockchain. As we're getting started here, how many people have Bitcoin with them today? About 35% of the room. And Ether? More even, maybe more exciting at the moment. .eth domain name owners? Few people. What about ICO investors? Few ICO investors. ICO issuers, future or current? Possibly in a regulated offering if you're in the US. And what about LedgerX options traders? Anybody doing this week or last week? Okay, great. And even if you've never heard of Bitcoin, this talk is for you too. The slides are posted on the event site and also online at slideshare.net/labalaga. My bio. So I wrote a book called Blockchain, an O'Reilly book, and the reason I wrote the book is to inspire us to build this world. The talk is about 45 minutes long and covers an introduction, a technical overview, blockchain ICOs, blockchain economic theory, why do we need blockchain, smart network convergence, and a conclusion. So blockchain and distributed ledger, I use the terms interchangeably. The key word is protocol. Blockchain, conceptually, is a software protocol. Just as SMTP is a network protocol for sending email, blockchain is a network protocol for sending money on the internet. More technically, blockchain is the tamper-resistant distributed ledger software underlying cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin for recording and transferring data and assets, such as financial transactions and real estate titles, via the internet without needing a third-party intermediary. Now, distributed ledger is the general form of the technology, and blockchain is a little bit more specific. The terms are most often used almost interchangeably. A ledger is just a file that keeps track of who owns what. A distributed ledger has the 4 properties that we're familiar with: a shared transaction database among network members, updated by consensus, records time-stamped in a unique cryptographic signature, in a tamper-proof audit history available for all transactions. Then blockchain is just another technical detail added to that of the sequential updating of database records per chained cryptographic hash-linked blocks. Another big distinction is public and private ledgers. Public is just like it sounds, it's open to anybody. The Bitcoin blockchain or the Ethereum blockchain. Anybody can join the internet, get an address, and book transactions. Your identity is unknown or pseudonymous, and if you're really concerned about privacy, you might use Zcash and their zero-knowledge proofs. Public chains, on the other hand, are what industry and government is using. Users have logins and credentials and access to just certain kinds of blockchains. The bigger context of the blockchain revolution is that blockchain is fundamentally the next phase of the internet. It's not just a fintech, it applies to every industry, just like the internet. We could think of there having been 2 fundamental eras of network computing. One, everything so far has been about transferring information over simple networks. And now we're entering a new phase of transferring value over smart networks. Blockchain is for every industry, and there are 4 types of applications: those involving money, property, contracts, and identity. Money is cash, real-time payments, clearing of securities and other assets. Smart property is the idea of making an inventory, a record of all kinds of hard assets, like auto titles, in a cryptographic asset registry, and then transferring property with these ledgers. Smart contracts is the idea of instantiating any kind of contractual arrangement between parties on a blockchain, probably for some portion of automated execution. And this could include wills, partnership agreements, registering trademarks and copyrights. 4th is identity, the registration and confirmation of entity on blockchains, for example, a birth registry or driver's licenses. Blockchain is the internet all over again, but because it involves money and property, it could take longer. It's more sensitive. We saw with the information internet, the graph on the left, that growth has been steady over the last 20 years. But still, in the graph on the right, only half of the world is online. Corporate email alone was the killer app for 15 years. So the money internet could take a lot longer. But its impact could be more profound, as a computationally based society has less need for a brick-and-mortar institutional footprint. What is at stake in the blockchain economy is the only sectors not yet reinvented for the internet era, economics, law, and government, can be redesigned. We did a really great job on the first part of the Renaissance Enlightenment in scientific information, But as Immanuel Kant encouraged us to think autonomously, free of the dictates of external authority, perhaps in the crypto enlightenment, we could really challenge ourselves to think about what is authority and what kind of relationship we would like with it in our lives. Technical overview. So we have some Bitcoin holders here with e-wallets. So your e-wallet holds keys, not money. Keys that you control the access to your money. When you want to execute a transaction, you open up your e-wallet app, scan the QR code or address of whomever you'd like to send some funds to, and submit it on the blockchain. If you have funds in your account at that address, they'll be transferred automatically by the software. The Bitcoin network is peer-to-peer, and so you might wonder, how robust is it? Right now, there are approximately 10,000 nodes worldwide with the full database of transactions of Bitcoin. And you can host a node yourself if you would like. Just download the software. Bitcoin mining is the accounting function to record transactions. The way it works is that mining chips do what's called find new blocks with the proof of work algorithm. The network regularly issues random 32-bit nonces, or numbers, per specified cryptographic parameters. The mining software constantly makes guesses at this nonce at the rate of 4 billion guesses per second. One machine at random guesses correctly. The winning machine then confirms and records all of the transactions and collects the rewards. Because it's a peer-to-peer network, then all the other nodes also confirm the transactions and append the new block to their copy of the distributed ledger. This wasteful effort is purposely designed to deter hacking or malicious players. Blockchain ICOs have been in the news a lot, and that's because these initial coin offerings or token sales have raised almost $2 billion cumulatively. An ICO is analogous to an IPO, but instead of investing in the equity of the company, you invest in a specific project. And that's more liquid for both the company receiving the funds and for you as an investor. ICOs received more than 4 times the size of VC fundings in 2017 so far. And as you probably saw in the news, some of these ICOs were pretty high profile. BATS receiving $35 million in just 30 seconds, for example. It's a real-time advertising bidding company. And so, unsurprisingly, the SEC issued guidance in July. They investigated initial coin offerings and found that in many cases, they behave like a stock and therefore are like a security and are regulated and need to be registered in the US. Not just ICOs are behaving like stocks and would need to be registered, but also the exchanges they trade on. The SEC hasn't said anything specific about smart contracts yet. And when they look at a security, they apply the Howey test to test different aspects of it as to whether it's a security or not. So what's safest in the US if you are wanting to be an ICO issuer is to have a regulated offering, likely qualifying for a Reg D exemption, but that's the way to proceed in the US. The UK, earlier than the US's guidance, said that they're not going to regulate ICOs. And what that means is that they're not illegal, but they're not safe. So the UK said, it's not safe for investors, we're not even going to look at it. China, this week, as you probably saw, in many ways, banned ICOs and the exchanges. So already today, some of the exchanges are making announcements about closing. Russia said they'll probably have some regulation by year end. And interestingly, analogous to the Delaware C Corp, there's the Gibraltar DLT Regulated Entities Initiative, which is positioning ICO registrations as a specialization that they're offering. I think that we should see ICOs in the bigger context of the crypto market becoming more institutional. Even though the current market cap of cryptocurrencies is 125 billion, which usually doesn't get a lot of attention in the institutional market, it is an asset class that has arrived, and therefore all international asset allocators need some kind of exposure, and they're looking for how to get it. 3 ways that they are starting to get exposure is by investing in regulated ICOs, through LedgerX cryptocurrency options, and through the growing institutional exchanges that allow large customer orders, which is over $20 million. To put the size of the crypto market cap in perspective, it's $125 billion, which compares to the S&P 500's $22 trillion and the US GDP's $18 trillion. So it's tiny, but on the other hand, $125 billion is a world top 60th country, and it's expected to grow over time, even if not in the immediate future. So I did want to talk about LedgerX because I think this is an extremely important development. It's a New York company that's has approval to trade cryptocurrency options, and they began trading last week. This is significant because this is an institutional product to acquire this crypto asset exposure. And if they become listed on CBOE and large exchanges, that could be extremely important. Indeed, on their website, they have a note that, we're throttling participation due to outsized demand. So this is an indication of the institutional market developing. I'd like to talk about 2 investment risks. First is immature infrastructure. The key word is protocol. Blockchain is a software protocol. The protocol layer is not the shiny application layer that everybody wants to invest in. So we could be putting the cart before the horse in the sense that we can see the obvious applications, but they aren't going to work until the network infrastructure is in place. And we might expect different cycles of boom and bust, just like we saw with the dot-com economy, that the network was not in place in the early days, and so we need to wait for that for the benefits. The other risk is Visa class processing. So Visa processes 2,000 transactions per second, and Bitcoin right now, 7 transactions per second. So how are we going to reach Visa class processing? One way is through the consensus algorithm that's used. What we would expect is that in the ecology of blockchain, every different industry might have different kinds of chains with different kinds of consensus mechanisms. So already, Factom has a healthcare billing chain. They do batch processing to the Bitcoin blockchain. The supply chain industry has a way of using coin as a receivables financing. So every different industry will have very specific business practices that dictate the kinds of blockchain that would be relevant. Plus, different levels of operations imply different kinds of security. So when I'm just confirming information on a supply chain shipment, that's a lot different than when I'm transferring money. The consensus algorithms, meaning the way the network executes the transactions, right now involve proof of work, which is how the Bitcoin blockchain runs, and that may not scale to Visa class processing. The other main method is proof of stake. Proof of stake is a complicated scheme of tiered voting by staked participants. And the worry here is, are we recreating agent-based power structures that we're trying to avoid? There could be other kinds of proof of algorithms in development, perhaps those based on computational completeness. The economic transformation story. So how many people remember a micro or macro economics class somewhere in your background? Lots of people. So you know that economics is the study of the production, distribution, and consumption of goods and services. Economics concerns individual and group decision-making about goods and services and the consequences. The fundamental dynamics of economics don't change no matter what kind of economy we're in. Wants are always bigger than available resources. There are costs to decision-making, and there's scarcity. whether material inputs or intangible inputs like time and attention. So it doesn't matter what kind of economy we're in, the dynamics are the same. In a classical economy of material goods, in a digital economy of digital goods, such as Spotify, or in a smart network economy where there are automated smart contracts exchanging cryptographic assets. One of the big current economic drivers is technological unemployment, outsourcing jobs to technology. And the key challenge is an orderly transition to the automation economy. Some economists warn that over 50% of jobs are on the risk of being automated in the next 20 years. Other economists wonder what's taking so long when we could be automating much more quickly. What is clear is that we're in a multi-agent computational economy with an increasing presence of computational agents. There might be 3 different domains in the economy: human-to-human economic transactions, human-machine collaborations, and the machine-to-machine economy. One challenge is trying to model the behavior of computational agents because we might not be able to apply the same kinds of ideas, like rational actor theory, that we do to humans. It's also clear that economics has become a set of general design principles extending well beyond the traditional setting of markets. This book, Money and the Early Greek Mind, discusses the idea that the concept of money was what inspired Plato to his general ideal theory of ideal forms. A key challenge in front of us is reinventing economics and government. How many people have heard of the long tail? Almost everybody. So the traditional idea was that markets behave per the 80-20 rule. 80% of sales come from the 20% top-selling products. But we find this isn't the case in digital markets. Here, we can sell more of less and focus on the long tail itself as a market. Researchers have found that 37% of Amazon's sales come from niche books, and that probably digital markets have a behavior more like a power law than a normal distribution. The key point is that delivering to personal preferences is a marketing strategy that works. Therefore, this idea of long-tail personalization might be applied to the digital marketplaces for financial and government services. One size no longer has to fit all, as any 2 parties can meet on a blockchain and transact in an eBay for money, so to speak. And this is behind discussion question 3 about whether you might prefer a cookie-cutter mortgage or a personalized mortgage. With long-tail financial services, we might start to rethink societal problems like debt with smaller chunk capital. We can rethink debt and also financial inclusion. Blockchain could be the next leapfrog technology, inviting the 2 billion underbanked in the world into the market, as well as the 70% that lack access to land registries. We need decentralized networks because hierarchy doesn't scale. It doesn't make sense to build out brick and mortar bank branches and medical clinics to every last mile in a world of digital services. So like cell phones, digital solutions with e-wallets and deep learning diagnostic apps could be the solution. Who's heard of scenario planning? Scenario planning is a classic futurist technique to put a framework around uncertain futures. The idea is that it's very difficult to make a point forecast about the future, but we can say what kinds of future worlds might show up. The way to do this is to identify the 2 key drivers in any market. So in blockchain, it could be government regulation and the rate of adoption of the technology. Then you map the extremes of the 2 drivers into a quadrant. So on the x-axis, we see slow adoption of the technology on one extreme and rapid adoption on the other side. On the y-axis, an unregulated market to a highly regulated market. And then we have 4 different states of the future world. Now, as news comes in, we can evaluate where we are. And so this is discussion question number 2, where we have some news. So this recent news, the first item is Sprint and SoftBank have a new blockchain telecom consortium. Is this good news? This sounds like good news, more like good news than bad news. Is Sprint and SoftBank in a blockchain consortium, is that an indication of regulated markets? Maybe a little bit, not hugely, because telecom is a regulated market, but it's not really about regulation. What about adoption, though? When we hear, is this good news for adoption? Yes, this is definitely good news for adoption. And so I put this, this news announcement here in support of adoption and some degree of regulation. So let's look at our second news item, which is Ripple and R3 file contract dispute lawsuits. Is this good news? This might be, it depends on who you are. And this could be, sounds like bad news maybe in the short term, but possibly good news on a longer term basis. Is it an indication of regulation? Yes, definitely, because it's a legal industry is involved and precedents may be set. What about, is it indicating that adoption might be fast or slow? Might slow adoption in the short term, but clarify it in the longer term. And so I put for B, it's definitely indication that we're in some kind of higher regulated market environment. And so this scenario planning is just a way of mitigating risk when we think about different kinds of future worlds. Economics and finance are systems that we have thought about for organizing access to resources. Economics mainly deals with the present time frame and measuring the past, and finance deals with the future. Capital, debt, investment. One analogy is that cryptocurrencies are to the spot market as smart contracts are to the futures and options market. In the cash market, the economist Hayek thought that each financial institution would issue its own currency as a way to compete for customer business and indicate its financial strength. What we actually see is that not just cryptocurrencies, but every company starting to issue its own coin. The website CoinMarketCap reads like a who's who list of the new economy. There are firms ranging from storage to banking to financial services to healthcare to technology platforms. We're rethinking cash, and we're also rethinking assets. There could be in the future securities as a service. Just as we've moved away from having to own hard assets in CDs and DVDs and autos and homes with services like Spotify, Netflix, Uber, and Airbnb, in the future, we might be able to have securities offered as a service. The idea is the liquidity or the availability of the consumable benefits of the asset so that we don't have to own the underlying. The future of institutions is certainly a question in the blockchain economy. So I ask you to consider, what are institutions? What is the role of institutions? One thing we think about the role of institutions is that they are here to organize life and manage contention. This is not likely to go away, so the influence of institutions could persist, even while there could be more choice about which ones we belong to and the form of institutions. They may be shifting from buildings to websites to credentials. Historically, there were 2 kinds of institutions, the crown and the church. If you were Christopher Columbus, you went to King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella for your venture capital financing, and that was the way the world was then. Now, in the contemporary world, we're familiar with many different kinds of institutions touching almost every area of our lives, and we wonder if a lot of them may be failing and how to reinvent them. In the farther future, institutions might continue to direct a large portion of our lives. But again, we might have more choice about which ones we belong to, and they might be powered by credential as opposed to buildings. The future of nation states is also a question, where also they are not likely to go away, but there are many kinds of reinvention going on. So one thing that we see is nation states trying to specialize and engage in regulatory arbitrage in the new world. So just as we have Delaware-based C corporations and Swiss and Cayman banking laws, different nation states are lining themselves up for different kinds of cryptographic regulatory arbitrage. This includes Estonia's e-residency program, Gibraltar's digital ledger technology registered entity program to be launched next year as an ICO response, and Malta having their online casinos now accepting Bitcoin. So nation states are trying to sort out their own identity and specialization in the wake of these transnational influences. Summary of blockchain economic theory is that the production, distribution, and consumption of goods and services in a blockchain economy is the same as that of a classical economy in some ways and different in others. It's the same in terms of the underlying dynamics not changing. Wants exceed resources, there's a cost to decision making, and scarcity is still present. Institutions, especially money and nation states, persist, but their form may change, and over time their role may change. Assets, identity, and information are still quantities in the economy, but they become increasingly cryptographic. What's different than a classical economy is that we are seeing this issue of technological unemployment and the presence of more computational agents in the economy. There is the leapfrog technology of digital ledgers for financial inclusion, and new economic design principles like the long tail and assets as a service. This is a chart just going through every element of blockchain economic theory specifically. So why do we need blockchain? So I argue that the reason we need blockchain is to work on the next tier of large-scale challenges. The key features of blockchain technology are secure value transfer, automation, and trackability. So the first and most obvious application domain for this is big health data. What we've learned from artificial intelligence is that in the cases of, say, machine translation and AlphaGo, that what makes a difference is finally having a large enough database, data corpora that we can run fairly straightforward algorithms over. But in health, because the information is sensitive, we've lacked a way to share secure information for research purposes, and we don't have big health data yet. Just as an indication is that Illumina, the biggest genome sequencer in the world, is very proud to announce that they've sequenced 18,000 humans so far. And indeed, that is quite an accomplishment. But where we need to go is genome databanks of 100,000 or 1 million people to get to big health data. So this is one reason we need blockchain. Another reason is for global energy market modeling. Now that we can start to store energy, plan, and transmit it, a much broader means of looking at this vast market for securely coordinating access to energy resources will be important. Likewise for global risk modeling, reducing the risk and loss from hurricanes, for example, or global financial meltdowns. Also in smart city modeling, this is New York Uber pickups in 2014. Smart city initiatives are another important domain for blockchain, as well as our reach to space. Blockchain is exactly a secure automation technology for the mining, energy production, and settlement that we want to do in space. So, smart network convergence. A new technology is not only a better horse, it's a new car. So let's think about the concept of blockchain and extend it to smart networks. Smart networks are computing networks with intelligence built in such that identification and transfer is performed by the network itself through protocols that automatically identify with deep learning and validate, confirm, and route transactions with blockchain on the network. We have the two fundamental eras of network computing in mind, where initially all we did was transfer information on simple networks, but now on smart networks, we're transferring value. And that's with more network intelligence baked in with blockchains to transfer value and confirm authenticity, and deep learning algorithms for predictive identification. Conceptually, deep learning is a computer program that can identify what something is. Is it a cat or a dog? Is it a face? Technically, deep learning is a neural net with layers of processing nodes that extract features from data and make predictive guesses about new data. The next phase is putting deep learning nets online. So we're going to need a secure technology like blockchain to register deep learning nets and AI thinkers such that they can be tracked and that we can have security around them. An immediate application of this is autonomous driving, where with smart networks, the deep learning technology can identify what things are, and the blockchain technology can provide the secure automation. Concluding. So let's talk about some practical opportunity. What's the low-hanging fruit here? I think one idea might be to concentrate on information confirmation kinds of applications as opposed to money transfer. That might be easier. And I've identified 5 different areas of this kind of low-hanging fruit: cryptographic asset registries, investor information services, supply chain and logistics, CRM, and business logic applications, and energy quoting. The idea would be, just like any business process automation project, to identify which steps have human decision-making that needs to be part of them, and which tier of operations can be automated with blockchain. Specifically, cryptographic asset registries is a domain indicated by many municipalities that they're open to exploring this. This would be putting land and auto titles online, public documents like voter registration and driver's licenses. And there's an opportunity to develop a leadership edge in your industry. This would be by starting or joining an industry consortium, developing and implementing digital ledgers, identifying the key parts that are important for our industry, and offering on the revenue generating side, offering applications to customers, or on the cost saving side, implementing QA regulatory compliance type ledgers internally. Concluding, the first point is that blockchain is a fundamental information technology for secure value transfer over networks. For any asset registered on a cryptographic ledger, the internet becomes a VPN for its transfer and confirmation. Second point is that we're reinventing economics and government for the digital age, and the long-tail structure of digital marketplaces is allowing the possibility of personalized services. Third point, a technology like blockchain is needed for next-generation challenges, including financial inclusion, big health data, global energy markets, and space. Fourth point, smart networks, a new form of automated global infrastructure, includes the ability to identify what things are with deep learning algorithms and validate, confirm, and route transactions with blockchain. Since we're futurists, I will make a very long-term conjecture on the order of 50 years, and this is a theory of computation. The idea is that basic physics discovery drives computational paradigms. Newton inspired the difference engine. Einstein and quantum mechanics inspired the transistor, and now quantum computing. Quantum gravity experimental evidence from last year is causing us to rearrange the furniture of how we think about the universe again: space, time, geometry, and dynamics. And I suggest that this can lead to a new computing paradigm at the Planck scale on the time frame of 40 to 50 years. Thank you for your attention.
We'll take some questions. And,
Oh, the microphone?
I'll just bring this around. I'll hand you the mic just so that it can be recorded, and we'll go from there. Who's got a question? Nobody? Oh, my goodness. I thought there would be every other person here.
Thank you. Melanie, the question of principal-agent problems, any thoughts?
You mean with smart contracts or humans?
For example,
both?
no, I don't care about humans. They're too complicated to understand. So what about software is easy, you can understand.
Yeah, I think it's, I think if we consider computational agents, the risk is that they modify their algorithms and develop much more quickly than we can understand. A recent example could be Facebook shutting down the AI chatbots that develop their own language. That it's not clear if Facebook shut them down because they were lying, they developed deception as a property, or because they were not understandable to humans. So I think we have a lot of fear about what kinds of behavior computational agents on their own out in the wild may get into. And so the agency problem, I think we'll see other kinds of the agency problem develop in the computational domain. Certainly any self-maximizing agent will try to act to do that. So I think we'll see a different kind of agency problem than with humans, but I think we'll certainly see acting in self-interest. And I think this will be completely a domain for future research.
Okay, anyone else?
Melanie, you refer to personalization and, just briefly. And so there are two ways I could read that. One is it's a driver in that consumers will be attracted to that aspect. But the other is, and I think this might be what you're saying, if you could elaborate, is that personalization is happening in our marketplace whether or not it's a selling point. You know what I'm trying, like that it's just a trend. And what would be driving that if not just our sort of Anglo preference for individuality?
Yes, and before I answer that, this is actually a perfect segue into the discussion question. So let's do a quick poll about, I think the question has a lot of complexities. And so let's just find out what people thought about question 3 here. Would you and people you know prefer a mortgage that corresponds to your specific needs or one that's just cookie cutter? So who wants a personalized mortgage? Okay. 50 to 60%. Who wants a cookie cutter mortgage? Okay. 5%. Okay, very interesting. Would anybody like to tell us why from either group?
I want the cookie cutter one because that has a federal subsidy.
Oh, okay. So incentives are a portion of your decision. And somebody from the personalized camp? Anybody?
I want a personalized mortgage because I'm self-employed and it's really hard to get traditional mortgages with unstable income.
Great. The market doesn't meet your needs. Okay. Okay, great. Thank you. So this question is tricky, like this gentleman suggested. And so on the one hand, cookie cutter mortgages they are designed to suit the mass market, and that might suit you, and it might have incentives with it. And it might be too complicated to build in a personalized product. On the other hand, personalized products suit us well. And so this is a Starbucks of mortgages. We want some greater degree of personalization, and I argue that the blockchain can now finally support some of this granularity in a way that traditional banking institutions cannot. And your point is maybe we see what's driving this in the market. I don't see any other driver other than economics driving this. So I think we'll start to see more personalization, more kinds of products that correspond, like this gentleman was saying, I'm a business owner, cookie cutter mortgages don't support my situation. So we could easily start to fill out new categories of the market that aren't supported now in a world of finance and government services that's more supported. I think government services is quite interesting too, because you can track who is consuming what and who wants to pay for what. And so there's a community bond company called Neighborly, Neighbor.ly in San Francisco, and they offer community microbonds. So you can invest in the bond issue you care about in your community. And so this is an interesting experiment because on the one hand, if only people with money pay for things they care about, we don't have maybe a full suite of services, and this has been one of the arguments for large-scale government. But on the other hand, if there are ways that we could invest in the things that large groups of people in communities care about, that might support quality of life for everybody. So thank you. I think it's a complicated question. What amount of personalization is right in financial and government services? And it's certainly more than now, which is one approach fits all, but it's not overchoice. And so finding where that is will be a multi-decadal kind of project.
You talked about a lot of different versions of blockchain, also kind of a proliferation of coins and cryptocurrencies. In the future of blockchain, how do you see kind of the consolidation, winners and losers, or I guess where do you see kind of the future of it going and ending up, and what will eventually be essentially the internet that will be blockchain and everything will be built on?
Oh, thank you. I think it's impossible to make a prediction about that, but I think we can think about it in 3 tiers. So Bitcoin might not be the final cryptocurrency. It's the biggest one right now. All of these altcoins could eventually shake out. Blockchain might not be the final protocol, but it's a first stab. But the principle of what's going on, decentralization, is probably something that's not going away. That was already proven with the internet. So just because hierarchy doesn't scale, we have to reach more people, more entities, more ways. So decentralization is not going away. Blockchain could morph, certainly, and especially these consensus algorithms, I think, need to be a lot more baked into the computational infrastructure. And the coins, I mean, who knows? A Bitcoin, it might be like, I don't know, all those web companies that, CompuServe, is Bitcoin CompuServe? But AOL is still around a little bit. So I think it's hard, and it's hard to see what might shake out. And so I think if you're an investor, you might follow a black swan kind of strategy, which is minimize downside risk by keeping most of my assets in non-crypto exposure and just picking a few bluebirds that might have significant upside. I think it would be crazy to think that a lot of these current ICOs are going anywhere. And then the other principle would be focus on value creation, not money making. So which companies are really creating value to contribute to the network? And that's going to be the clue for long-term benefit, I think.
What do you see as some of the inherent weaknesses
of
blockchain?
all of this stuff?
I mean, because, like, for example, energy utilization
Yes.
is tremendously high for all the mining that goes on.
Oh, I see. Those kinds of detriments. I think the biggest one is nobody understands it. And so it has to be, this is relates to question 1, which is when it becomes like an ATM or Twitter, Instagram, that there's some consumer packaging, there's a usable consumer front end on it. It doesn't get usable before then on a mainstream basis. The mining, yes, computationally wasteful and energy consumptive, but then one of the other arguments is, well, it still uses far less energy and resources than human-based brick-and-mortar bank branches. So the entire financial apparatus could be outsourced to a mining operation, and that would be more efficient. So I think we're still in early days of figuring these things out. I think we're really scratching our heads about, I think government regulation is one of the biggest risks, that we kill it before it gets started, because it's so big and amorphous and octopus arm-like, we don't know how to regulate it, so maybe we just stamp it out, and it becomes more like the Silk Road again. But yeah, I think people don't understand it, and we're sandboxing new models, and government regulation is a big risk.
At several points, you noticed a sort of parallel development between consumer and business technology. Do you think that they will be comparable the way our PCs are comparable at home at work, or do you think that they will be very different?
The consumer and enterprise change, that they would be like PCs, did you say?
Well, to the extent that I have a PC at home that is not that different from my PC at work, or would the blockchain that I might use at home for my personal transactions be far less sophisticated or less secure or than?
Yeah. I don't think it's a business consumer question as much as an application question. So I think tier depends on the application. So if we're having information confirmations in an enterprise setting, we'll be having all kinds of secure information confirmations. Did the shipment arrive? Did the quote arrive? And so as opposed to consumers may not be as concerned about information confirmations, but for money transfer. And so there'll be money transfer in consumer applications as well as in enterprise applications. And I can't imagine they wouldn't have analogous security levels. So I think that's not the split, and I think it'll be just like the internet. Once we start to see all kinds of investment from the enterprise side and applications really developed and established, then now that I use it at work, I can see how I can use it at home. And so I think the bigger investor, and that's what we already see, for example, in the financial institutions, the R3, the ECMs, the global banking initiatives, Ripple, we see the big corporate investment on the enterprise side, first working out the kinks, and we see Jamie Dimon saying, forget it, there's no, he answered question 1, so we might have to ask about HSBC instead of Chase, but the consumer wallet question is far out as far as Chase might be concerned.
Great, so if people are trying to learn more about the ICOs, not just the currencies, how is the best way that they can MVP testing ideas or building structures? Because with the early internet, you were able to learn how to code and build a website pretty easily. What's that path outside of the currencies, but more on building on the blockchain?
Thank you. I would say go to meetups. Go to the Bitcoin and Ethereum and blockchain meetups. And there's a Consensus meetup right here in Brooklyn. It's having hackathon right now. And that's a great way to, and they have a really great identity interface that's well documented and easy to use. I've used in a hackathon. It's called Uport. So that would certainly be one path to sandboxing. So all of this software is open source. You just go to GitHub and download it. There are many YouTube videos for trying to use smart contracts on Ethereum, for example. And you can email me, and I have 2 specific links for that if you're interested. And then the other way is, so not just in the ICOs. So there are some different websites that are consolidated listings of ICOs, and they try to tell you a little bit about it. It's sort of like a securities analysis website, like the Moody's and S&Ps of ICOs, but it doesn't really give you what you're looking for in terms of, hey, let me go sandbox the code myself. So I would try the developer route for that.
Melanie, you spoke about proof of work and proof of stake. Just as far as proof of stake and Bitcoins go, I understand there are a finite amount of Bitcoins that will be released in the next, I think, 10 years. They say it'll run out. And my question is, as it gets harder and harder to mine Bitcoins, essentially the value of mining goes down. What kind of risk is there for it not paying off to actually mine in the near future?
Thank you. So most of these cryptocurrencies have a fixed, unlike fiat currencies like the dollar, have a fixed money supply. So you can find out what's the max that there will ever be of this currency. So that's a great attribute to the currency, as opposed to, you might be in Venezuela or the US and you just print more money when you need it. So that's an important parameter of almost all cryptocurrencies, is you can know a lot more about the structure of the monetary policy. And what happens over time is initially there are a few coins issued, and then at some moment all of the possible money supply will be fully issued. And so the worry is, well, miners are incentivized by discovering new blocks and getting the fees from that. But the fees have two components, and one is discovering new blocks and one is transaction fees. And so over time, as the overall use of Bitcoin grows, then presumably the transaction fees that I pay every time I have a Bitcoin transaction start to go up and comprise a bigger portion of the miner rewards over time, such that once all of the money supply is issued, it's all transaction fees that are made by the miners. And it's enough, it's a small transaction fee, it's enough to incentivize to make economic sense such that mining can continue.
So how is that regulated so that it's always worthy of the miners to constantly...
Have you submitted any Bitcoin transactions?
I have not Bitcoin, just Ether, just proof of stake.
Oh, okay. So when you submit a Bitcoin transaction, there's a transaction fee. And you can certainly leave that blank, but if you do, your transaction may not be picked up in the block and ever confirmed. And so your wallet automatically suggests a certain amount, a very small percentage, and you include that in your transaction. And that's an incentive that's paying the miner for the accounting function of confirming and recording the transaction.
Hi, kind of a two-part question. One is, with the rise of more private blockchains that you see in terms of companies, for example, like the DTCC investigating or testing out about trying to settle the derivative transactions between counterparties. Do you see a problem perhaps in the future where hackers, or in particular state actors with enough computational power, could get in and actually be able to recompute all of the old transactions, since they would have enough power to do the proof of work for all the past transactions? And the second part to that is, do you see perhaps blockchains could be running to some sort of almost like an outside context problem, where once quantum computing becomes scalable, then the cryptographic hashing that has to be part of the proof of work becomes almost instantaneous for a quantum computer? So do you see that as basically running into almost like a brick wall, and that may not be something you could plan for, or how would you plan for that?
So first part of the question is private chains like the DTCC. So private chains would likely be using the same Bitcoin blockchain or any kind of whatever the current standard is. They aren't going to be having their own they may be having a private chain, but they're not using decremented technology compared to the state of the art. And so they're not at any greater risk for their chain being hacked than anybody else. And so that is sort of an interesting scenario, that once all kinds of different agencies have their own chains, and then cyber attacks from malicious parties and including other countries, the North Korea chain gets on board. So I think cybersecurity in the future, and particularly with blockchain entities, is a very big deal and an opportunity for market businesses. But I don't see that it's not that certain chains would be more hackable than others. Every chain should be using the state of the art. And then your second question is about the outside contract problem. So what about quantum computing and the evolution of cryptography? So right now what's interesting is quantum computing is just not interested at all in the blockchain world. They're interested in adiabatic computing and energy conservation and many other kinds of things. But the moment, so as computational algorithms keep advancing and we start to hit SHA-3 and so on, then these have to be implemented in blockchain. You have to, it's a Red Queen problem. You have to, I have to run faster than my friend to outrun the lion. I don't have to outrun the lion, I need to run faster than my friend. So everybody just needs to be going as fast as the latest technology. But the moment that SHA 3.1 or quantum computing can factor the next tier scale larger numbers, everybody has to upgrade. So certainly if you are looking at a long-term strategic planning project for your CTO of a large cryptocurrency company, you would be imagining that you will be needing to keep upgrading for these different cryptography advances, certainly.
You mentioned Debt by David Graeber. I was hoping you could just expand on your thoughts about kind of like his thesis and how you see blockchain playing into that.
Yeah, I think we have to really rethink debt completely. So right now, there's one uniform monolithic structure. It's very costly to go out and fundraise. Then you get disgorged a huge chunk of lump sum capital, and it's very painful to pay it back over time. So we need much more ambient, real-time models that have, say, a time lock, smart contract payment structure such that as long as I'm keeping up with certain behaviors, I'm getting disgorged periodically new capital inflow to support my project. And so we have much more real-time, flexible structures of money being disgorged and money being used by individuals. Furthermore, I think that we can have the idea of automatic capital, so like auto funding for Kickstarter projects that are in a much broader sense. Capital sources automatically fund worthy projects, and this is all taken care of computationally. So I think it's a huge problem for individuals, medical debt, student debt, and for governments. So we definitely didn't figure out how to do debt right. I think we would need to extend Graeber's thesis with these crypto models that target personalized situations, which exactly like you mentioned, small business owners somehow don't fit in the way we've thought about risk and been able to provide capital before. But this is arguably one of the biggest. So what if we provided debt based on value creation possibilities? So then business owners might be able to receive capital to test these ideas much more easily, and including in smaller chunk capital that doesn't carry this huge cost of fundraising effort. Thank you. One more question?
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
Thank you. So coming back to the quantum question,
Yes.
You said everybody upgrades and we're good, but what about the past transactions? Does that protect the past transactions?
The past. Yeah, that's a good point. I don't have a good technical answer for that, but we need to think about archival and protect. We already had this issue with the hard fork, so we haven't really thought about a good solution for archival, and we would need some way how. And so furthermore, what capital can be used to support retaining the integrity of those past transactions, that they don't get hacked and it's like King Tut's grave, just pillaged. So I think a problem, another risk with blockchains, we didn't think about any kinds of things like archival and full life cycle solutions per these radical technology upgrades. So on the other hand, we could just say that's an opportunity to think about that kind of eventuality.
You may not want to have your medical data become visible to anyone 10 years from now.
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay, so I appreciate
everybody coming by and your interest and your questions, which are wide-ranging and objective and non-self-promotional. And especially Melanie for coming by and sharing her extensive knowledge in this area, which has just become, it's amazing how it's jumped from the fringes 7 or 8 years ago to really front-page news in almost any mainstream publication, even outside of business. So I appreciate it. I don't have anything planned coming up, but you never know, and sometimes I announce them 3 or 4 weeks ahead of time. Sometimes I have a little bit more lead time. Certainly open to any ideas that you have. If you know somebody or if you just have an idea. Now, no, I can't get Malcolm Gladwell. He's well over $100,000 and he doesn't do free gigs. But you'd be surprised to be able to get some really good talent, whether they're passing through here promoting a book or they just have something that fits into the long-term futurist rubric. I'm just going to quickly give away books. Some of these are futurist books. Some of them are just more some business tomes that I've come across in my speaking business. So I'm going to just announce people's names and you just come up and pick the one that you want. Closing my eyes. Michael Mitzman, come on down, or not. Bob Trojan, who I spoke to before. Somebody from Eisner Amper, Dan King. All right, you're a winner. Someone from Oric, Ina Blythe.
Future
Sorry if I
law.
didn't get that right.
That's important. Help us with the ICO fundings.
So I got a choice of 2 books. One from Joshua Linkner, who's a great speaker and talks about innovation, sort of a serial entrepreneur, started out with a digital promotional agency and is helping with let's call it the reemergence of Detroit as a business center. Danny DeGrave from Sanofi.
Yay,
Yay.
Mr. Crypto.
Oh, okay. All right, so thanks once again. Feel free we love getting promotion on Twitter or whatever other social media platform you're on. And up to you, Melanie, if you want to stay or if you have to go, if people want to come and just chat.
Yeah, happy to chat. Thank you, everybody, for being here.
Thank you so much.